I'm Jenny Bazing from the Polyform Design Studio, and I'm going to show you today how to embellish your plain sweater with some beautiful clay buttons. Alright, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is make the little bump that goes in the middle of the button. So the way you do that is you take some conditioned clay, and on mine I use the Premo Wasabi Green, which is my very most favorite color. And you kind of make a little flat pad like that with your fingers. And then have a tile that you can put in the oven. I usually use just an inexpensive ceramic tile from the hardware store. And you push the etch and pearl tool through, lift up the clay, and then leave that little bead on the tile like that. I just usually aim to make as many as I can and not try to make each one perfect, because then if one has a little crack or bubble in it, you just skip that one and just go on to the next one. So I just keep doing that repeatedly until I have as many as I need, and actually I usually will cover the whole tile, and then I have lots of little leftover bumps that I can use on other projects. So what you do then is you'll put that in the oven for about 10 or 15 minutes. When it comes out of the oven, they look exactly the same, only they are baked, and then you can just pick them off. And if it's got this little piece of flashing or this little edge around it, you can usually just sort of pick that off with your fingers, or if you need to, if it's thicker, you can use your X-Acto knife and you can just kind of cut it off like that. So anyway, that's the first step. So now you've got that done, and I usually like to do that first just because then when you're conditioning your other clay and making your cane, then that can be in the oven and it helps you do the whole project a little bit faster. So the next thing we're going to do is actually make the cane, and it's a very easy bullseye cane. And all bullseye mean is that it has a solid color in the center and then it has different colors wrapped around. So first you start out with your center color, and that's about a half of a package of peacock pearl. And just getting a little bit warmed up and make it nice, about 2 inches wide, half package about 2 inches wide. And so as you can see from the finished button, here, let me grab one. The first color around the peacock blue is magenta pearl. So what you're going to do is take your sheet of magenta pearl, lay it on your work surface, cut one edge off straight with your super slicer. You lay this little log right on the edge and kind of tap it down so that you stick it together. And roll it up. And you kind of roll it by pulling a little bit towards you and then rolling at the same time, and that way you won't get an air bubble trapped in between. So you keep rolling until the edge touches the clay. And if you'll look, it's really hard to see, probably on the camera, but you'll be able to see it in person, that there's a little line that gets scribed in there from this front edge of this clay. And what you do is you cut inside that edge a little bit. That makes it a little bit shorter than going all the way around. And then when you pick it up and you tap this down, see how there's a little bit of a space there? Well, what you do is you just use your thumb and forefinger, or index finger, and you just press it together. And that's the way to get a perfectly nice, even bullseye cane where you can't see where you wrapped each layer around. And then you want to smooth that seam together. So the pattern for the bullseye cane is to do 2 layers each of magenta pearl, then wasabi, and then purple pearl. So what you do, I usually kind of trim that end off just so it's not sticking out there, is then put it back on the edge of the clay and repeat the same exact thing again. So you're going to smooth it, you're going to pull it towards you a little bit to tighten it up, roll it down, touch it, cut inside that line, pick it up, smooth it, and then press that seam together. So then when you do that with all the layers, and then trim off the ends, then this is the cane that you end up with. And you can see it's pretty big, obviously a lot bigger than what you want your finished button to be, So now we're going to reduce it. And all that means is by rolling it and pressing on it a little bit and stretching it a little bit, you make it skinnier and longer. And the great thing about polymer clay is the design will stay the same way on the inside as you keep going without you ever having to do anything. And what you want to do when you reduce is just gently press it and roll from the inside out. You want to try to keep it the same thickness all the time. You don't want to have it really skinny in the middle and really big on the ends, or the other way around. If you keep it the same, then you'll be able to reduce it so that your whole cane is an equal length. Using your cane, it'll be about a little bit higher than 1 inch in diameter and long like this. I trimmed the ends off so that you can see that the design is exactly the same in the middle, only smaller. And now you're going to cut your slices. So you'll need at least 1 slice for every button on your sweater. So if your sweater has, like mine, had the little tiny buttons, I think there were maybe about 10 of them altogether. And obviously you can get a lot more than 10 slices out of this, so maybe we'll talk a little bit too about different things you can do with your slices. So when you start the slice, you might need to roll your cane a little bit to get it started, and then you slice down with your blade. And then take your cane slice and kind of stick it on your blade like this. And then you can use it to measure how thick your next slice should be, so that way they're all the same. Alright. So once you have your slices done, they might deform a little bit, and you can just press on them and get them back into the round. Put it down on your work surface. And then you want to take your etch and pearl tool, and you're going to use the tip, and you're going to drag it through the clay. You're not drawing on it like this, or you're not like writing on it, but you're kind of going to drag it like that. And the way we're going to do it to make sort of a flower design is you're going to drag from the edge to the center. So you take that tip of that tool and you just drag it from the edge to the center, and then go the opposite way from the edge to the center. And now do it at a 90-degree angle, and now do it at a 90-degree angle again. So now you have it sort of cut into quarters, and you can already see how it's sort of getting a flower shape to it. So now what you can do is in between each quarter you can put 2 more lines. And it doesn't have to be perfect by any means. It'll look great no matter the way you do it. But I don't ever, as you can probably tell, measure it. So I'm dragging those lines. See how it's turned into a flower? This quarter was a little bit bigger. I could put 3 in there maybe. I know, scientific, right? That's me. Alright, so that's all there is to it. So you're going to take that, and you're going to take a little bit of a deli paper or waxed paper. You're just going to put it over the top of there, and you're going to smooth it down a little bit with your finger, just to smooth out those edges a little bit. And if your slice is a little bit out of round, what I like to do is I'll take a clay cutter that's a little bit bigger than my design, like this. See how it just barely fits in there? Let me tilt that up. And then I just kind of jiggle it and bang the edges a little bit so it gets round. And that's round enough. The last step would be to take one of my little pearls and put it right in the middle and press it in. You don't have to press it in too much. When it bakes, the raw clay will bond together with that baked clay, and it'll all be one piece, and it'll be perfectly fine. Alrighty, so you just carefully peel that up. You'd put that on your baking sheet, and then just keep going until you have enough buttons for your whole sweater. So now that your buttons are baked, for instance like this, how am I going to get them on that sweater that has all those little teeny buttons on it? Where's that button that I had? Here it is. That sweater was just a very plain cardigan, and it had these little tiny buttons. Well, of course, my big button isn't going to fit through the buttonhole on the sweater. So what I did was I just glued these using E6000, or you could use any kind of fast-drying solvent-based glue. And I kept the sweater buttoned, and I just glued the buttons right on. Now, the one tricky part is if you have a crew neck, you can't really glue that button on because then you won't be able to get the sweater over your head. So what I did with just the top button is I glued on a snap. Let's show this. So the top button here is actually a snap that was glued on. And I actually even glued the snap right onto the sweater because that E6000 glue is very strong and it just glued right in there. Just made sure and kind of press that glue into the sweater fibers so that it would really adhere very well. And that way you can unbutton that button and put the sweater on and then just put your snap right on there. So once you've made a cane, what you usually end up having is a lot of these little end pieces from your cane and a lot of little slices that didn't quite work out, and you think like, well, what am I going to do with those? It seems like it's just scrap clay, but there is something really great you can do with it, and it's similar to this technique to make another marbleized sheet that you could use on a lot of different projects that you have. So what you do is you just compress your scraps. You can see I didn't do anything very scientific with it. I'm just trying to make it into a log here, roll it on my work surface. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to twist it. So what I like to do is twist it 2 or 3 times and push it together and smooth it out. So push it together, twist a little more. See how it's turning into stripes? Kind of irregular stripes. Smooth it out. So now I have this little stripey piece, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to smash it flat a little bit. Then you put it through your pasta machine and you put the stripes perpendicular to the rollers. So, and you can look at both sides and decide like which side looks nicer. These both look pretty good, but I just use this side. Now you're going to use your same drag technique with your etch and pearl tool. You could also use a needle tool, you could use a toothpick, but the etch and pearl tools are great, I really like them. And you're just going to drag a line through the stripes. And I like to put them about, maybe 1/4 of an inch apart. And I'll show you why in a minute. Can you see how that's making that design already? That marbleized design? Then you just pick up your piece of clay, or if you're working on a piece of tissue or something like that, you can turn it around if you're working on a smaller piece. And then I drag a line in between the lines that I already did. And that gives you the alternating up and down effect of the lines. See how cool it is? How even though they're stripes, these different colors are kind of blending together. Okay, so once all the stripes are done, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten it a little bit in the pasta machine, or the clay conditioning machine. So it's already on a number 1 setting, so I'm going to put it on number 3, which is a little bit thinner. And I'm going to enter the stripes into the rollers perpendicularly. Leave it like this, or let me just show you how if you take half of it and make it a little bit thinner, what the stripes look like. It's on a number 4 setting. So then a number 4 setting is thin, so what you can do is take just another piece of your other clay that you had left over, and you could layer it on top, and you could make a button out of it or a pin. Just take a regular clay cutter and just cut through there. Use your etch and pearl tool or your needle tool, make a couple buttonholes, and voila, you have another kind of button.